All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Livewire. I am your host, Jerod Moore, and Livewire is the program where we take your questions from the chat. Today's program, we're going to be talking about the Chickasaw Opera Loksi Shaali. And you guys may have noticed we covered it previously whenever it premiered in Oklahoma. And this time we're going to be covering the East Coast premiere with the usual suspects, Dr. Kirsten Kunkle, composer Jerod Tate, but also a whole lot of other people that are part of the production. And to start off with, Dr. Kunkle and Mr. Tate, thank you for joining us today. And Kirsten, if you would introduce everybody else that we have here in our group of people so the audience knows who they are.
Isje Mvskoke Stongo, Dr. Kirsten C. Kunkle Joho Jeff Kados. I'm Dr. Kirsten C. Kunkle. It's very nice to be back here on Livewire with Mvskoke Media and Jerod Moore. And Ippo'si, or the grandmother in Loksi Shaali. I'd like to introduce some of my colleagues. This is Tian Hui-Ng, and he is our conductor, and also the person who commissioned the entire opera way back when. Next to him is Youngblood, Lumbee, and he is playing Okhina, the river. Over here, sneak on in if you want. This is Mark Billy, and he is Choctaw, and he is playing the role of Inki, the father. There's Mark. And we also have, of course, Jerod Tate, our composer, and Lokosh, or Joshua Hinson. He is also Chickasaw, and he is our translator for the libretto, as well as in charge of language revitalization for the Chickasaw Nation. So we are all thrilled to be here and talking about our favorite topic, which is the very first tribal language Native American opera that we get to sing a second time now here in Massachusetts in a few days.
Awesome. Well, and you guys, if you have no idea what we're talking about, there's a link to our previous interview in the description you can check out after we're done here. So we've talked about Loksi Shaali before, and so what is the East Coast premiere? Where is it going to be held? And are there going to be like substantial differences between the premiere that was in Oklahoma and what's going to happen on the East Coast? And whoever wants to take that.
I'd like to defer to our conductor, Tian. Maestro, would you mind explaining the premiere at Mount Holyoke?
Sure. This is happening at Mount Holyoke College, and we are here in South Hadley, Massachusetts, in Western Massachusetts. And we are a historic women's college, and the idea that we're presenting the story of a girl who becomes a woman and the discovery of the shells in between is very, very exciting and very, very pertinent to our story here at the college. And you know, our presentation here is a little bit different in the sense that, you know, we are a student group, so this is the Mount Holyoke Symphony Orchestra that is playing, as well as the very historic Mount Holyoke choral forces, with some of the oldest choral programs and ensembles in the country, including the nation's oldest continuously running a cappella group, the Victory Eights. So it's a very, very rich and long choral tradition here. And indeed, this work is going to happen in Abbey Memorial Chapel, which is our historic space as well.
Awesome. So, and I want to remind you guys watching, if you have a question, pop it in the chat. So with this performance, one of the things we talked about previously with the Oklahoma premiere was, is there going to be any way for anybody to see this apart from attending the performance? Is it going to be recorded or streamed anywhere? Do you guys know? And whoever wants to handle that.
Unfortunately, we're not live streaming that, but partly because of the complexity of, you know, making sure that the feed and everything looks good. But we are recording this, so there will be a good audio recording of the performance, but also likely a very, very good video recording. And we look forward to seeing how that would be, you know, released.
Okay. Is there a possibility that people can maybe buy a copy of that on a website, or is it going to be like a library where you would go to the library and check it out? Or how do you think that would go out? Anybody? Mr. Tate, you're...
Yeah, this is not a commercial endeavor right now.
Okay,
so
okay.
It's, I mean, we're kind of back to old school. You got to go to a performance.
All right. Well, it's good for people to know that ahead of time. So if, let's say somebody's watching this and they want to attend this performance, where would they go to get tickets? And do they need to show up at the venue and get tickets? Or is there an online process? What do they do?
So they would go to the college website, which is mtholyoke.edu. And on there, we are the top event that's happening on Friday, the 28th. And if you hit on that, it will lead you to a ticket link as well as more detailed information about the story of the opera and the performers and so on.
Okay. This also a way that might be a little easier is to look up Jerod Tate on all of the socials, and I have the link, especially on Facebook. That's a really good one. I've got a live link for all the concert information and ticket purchases for that.
Awesome.
And the credits for everybody that's involved and everything. So it's very clear on my webpage, and my socials are all open to the public.
Okay, great. And what's the run of the opera going to be? Is it going to be a week, a month, or is it like one night only? Okay.
Night only.
So could you guys talk a little bit about the challenges of doing a performance that's a one night only as versus something that's going to be running for a while? Are we going to see a significant difference between the production from what premiered in Oklahoma between what's going to premiere at Holyoke?
This is actually a shorter version of it. This one, the opera, when it premiered, was 2.5 hours, and so this will be 2. And actually, it was inspired because I actually had to edit it down for a broadcast recording that was when it was broadcast out of Oklahoma City. They can't go over an hour and 50 minutes on their broadcast, so I had to kind of slice and dice, and so it actually became an production time for this particular group here, Mount Holyoke. But that happens in theater all the time. There's usually there's all kinds of versions of productions that happen. So this is like a really live example of how that's done. And so the next time it performs, maybe a different version as well.
What's your preference? Sometimes when you're forced into a situation where you got to cut it down, you're like, hey, I like the cut down version better. Do you like the cut down version or the longer version personally?
Honestly, I really have no preference to that. I grew up in theater, and so to me, even when you do excerpts or scenes or anything like that, to me that's all really exciting, and I actually kind of like it when it gets mixed up a little bit like that. I think it's really cool to have different varieties of versions of pieces. In fact, in my concert repertoire, people have asked me, it's a little long, is it okay if we make cuts? And I'm very open to that, and I'm a little on the unusual side about that with composers. I actually invite people. It's like I trust conductors, the maestros, and the maestro to make those types of decisions, and that's happened with many of my works, and I'm very comfortable with that type of thing happening, and I think that's kind of cool. So I personally like different versions of my pieces running around.
Awesome. Well, and speaking of that too, Maestro, could you speak a little bit about your experience with working with this? How did this get introduced to you, and then how has your experience been in working with the orchestra and everybody in this piece?
It's actually been amazing, probably one of the most important life-changing things that's happened in my life. If not, it just is. This journey goes back at least 4 years when Jerod and I first started talking about this, and the whole project is possible because of a significant amount of money that came from the Mellon Foundation through the Native American Indigenous Studies grouping in the 5 colleges. And the 5 colleges here are Smith College, Amherst College, Mount Holyoke College, UMass Amherst, and Hampshire College. So it was a really, really big endeavor to bring this to our region. And, it occurred to me that, I'm so delighted right now to be surrounded by all of my Native colleagues. This was something that was unimaginable to me 5 years ago. And as a person who is originally from Singapore, arriving in the United States, I remember a moment where I was asking myself, so where is the Native music? And I was in the conservatory and I was asking to learn a little bit more about it. But at that time, there was nobody around me who could have an answer other than, well, we don't really know about it. So maybe you will have some better luck finding it somewhere else, that was really that. But also here at Mount Holyoke, then Jerod has been such an integral part of this process for us. So we actually started with a process of reading the script. So we did table readings with Mark and Kirsten and also Kate and Morton here, so that we could get a sense of what the story was like. And so we workshopped it in that way. We worked with the dramaturg team that kind of provided some insights here. Then we went on to a process of developing what we would call a piano vocal workshop part, where some parts of it was written. And I know that Jerod talks with our singers on a regular basis. So that was a fantastic opportunity to workshop that. And this performance at Mount Holyoke was always intended as the orchestral workshop, that this would be the final test run of how it would sit with an orchestra, how it would feel pacing wise. So, I think that spirit of editing and finding like the best shape for this and a way that would motivate opera companies around the world to pick this up continues to be an aspiration of what we're doing. So I think this is to us amazingly exciting. I can't tell you how excited my colleagues are. I've heard from everybody from literature, history, physics, experimental, there are people coming from all walks of life. And also this is probably one of the biggest endeavors we as the Five College Native American Indigenous Studies student has ever embarked on. And through the generosity of the artists that I'm surrounded with, we already had a workshop from Kirsten. We just had a recital from Mark Billy over here. We're having a recital from Grant tomorrow. And then Lokosh is going to come and talk about how the opera fits in the greater landscape of language revitalization. And then we have an opportunity to talk also with Jerod. So all of that is open to everybody in the public. So if you're able to come and join us, and we'll be looking forward to putting up videos of all of those opportunities too, so that people can have the opportunity, I think from my perspective, to learn from all of this and hopefully get, infected with our enthusiasm and then really want to.
Awesome. And the program sounds great. I was worried there for a second, Mr. Henson, because you dropped out because I was gonna ask you a question next. And you go by the Chickasaw name Lokosh. Am I saying that right?
Lokosh.
Lokosh.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're the translator for the project. So you translated everything into the Chickasaw language for the opera. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've worked on many projects with Jerod, Tate. Translating.
Could you talk a little bit about the challenges of the translation process and how because I'm sure there were times where you had to fit phrasings to match up with how notes were written, or what was that process like?
So generally, in this case, I'll just speak about Loksi Shaali. Jerod wrote the libretto, and he shared it with me, and then it was just a dialogue back and forth. He wants to express something in some particular way, and I would say, great, that's super easy. And then other cases, there are certain English idioms that don't quite work in Chickasaw, and we would negotiate that. As far as like fitting the language into sort of the musical structure, that's Jerod's realm. We've never quite worked to that degree where we're trying to match the rhythmic lengthening processes and like the way that it's spoken in a musical context. But we have a project coming up soon that we're going to be doing the same thing.
Awesome. Well, that was one of my questions too. Was or when you write, if you're a native English speaker and you write a song, sometimes you will write a song from the perspective of a phrase that everybody knows and the rhythms of it, how everybody says it the same, And I was just curious as to whether that had happened like with the Chickasaw language, where there's a Chickasaw phrase that most Chickasaw use that speak the language, and then that got kind of turned into a song. That was what I was curious about. But it sounds like you guys, that's where you guys are going. Would that be safe to say?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
There was a combination of things that were going on at the exact same time. So just for perspective, I'm not a fluent speaker. I'm an adult learner of the language, and so but I do understand and pronounce the language well enough that I'm very comfortable writing for it. So that's there. But one thing that's really, really cool is that working with Lokosh is really easy, especially because he is really comfortable taking the lead. Like he'll tell me straight up, like he'll just completely rewrite a sentence for me, like or redo it. And let me know exactly what that's meaning. And so of course I'm learning the language even better as I work with him. So he's actually in a lot of ways my teacher as I'm doing all this. And so then I will go ahead and redo the libretto so that the English reflects what he just adjusted. So he's making live adjustments of what the people are reading in English even. And so I'm really grateful that I can do that with him, because then when people read the English, it feels more Chickasaw as they're reading the English, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
They're getting
no.
more of a sense of how it's being constructed in the Chickasaw language to begin with. So the ethos comes right back into the English, and more time. I would say 80% of the time, his rewrites become the English version, if that
Right.
makes sense.
No,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, even if it looks a little more abstract in the English, I like the feel because that's really how it's kind of coming across in Chickasaw. So that's really neat. But in our next project that we're doing with Loyola University in Chicago, I am now writing music to his original poetry in Chickasaw. And so that is going to affect me differently, how I write the music to that, because it's originated with his Chickasaw thought process.
Yeah.
And again, it's like I can understand it well enough, so I feel very comfortable, which is great. And so now we've got that coming. So he and I have worked under like kind of almost every possible kind of process, really. It's been really comprehensive how we've done this, and I'm proud of that. I think it's neat, and it's God. I wish I could relate what that experience is like, but it's so unique what we've done.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly blessed that he has accepted working with me.
Well, it sounds like a fascinating process, and also a fascinating opportunity to do that synthesis. Before we go any further, I wanted to touch on Mr. Billy and Mr. Youngblood. I see you guys, and you guys have been on the program before, I don't think so. Let's start off with Mr. Billy. What has your experience been like playing the role of father in the opera? And kind of, if you might give the audience a little bit of idea of what your background is as far as opera is concerned.
Sure. So I'm Choctaw. I grew up in southeastern Oklahoma, the Choctaw Nation. And I just have to say that in all of my training as an opera singer and as an instrumentalist, I never foresaw being able in my lifetime to perform works in indigenous languages. And especially, so the Chickasaw and the Choctaw are they're very close brother languages. So it's a lot of overlap and the sounds are basically all the same. So, you know, I grew up singing in church, singing Choctaw hymns. So getting to put those sounds in my classical opera genre is just an amazing experience. And just, I'm so lucky and blessed to be with all of these artists making this music. Singing the role of Inki in Shell Shaker has been an amazing time. It's beautiful music. It's so lush, and it's right up my alley in terms of the way that the orchestration is and everything. I don't want to compare Jerod to any composer, but it reminds me of, like, you know, some Puccini sometimes, and I love that. I love the Italian lushness of that. And it's kind of funny. I'm a Verdi baritone, and I sing fathers all the time. That's just part of my life. So this is Holly. Yeah.
He's meant to be.
Awesome. Mr. Youngblood, what has your experience been? And your role is the role of Okhina, the river, is that right? What is that character like? And also, you know, if you wanted to touch on your experience with opera, or if your native heritage in any way, go for it.
Well, I am Lumbee from kind of the southern part of North Carolina originally, and I actually came to classical music and opera fairly late by some standards. We didn't really start studying voice until I was in college. But this character is probably, if there was sort of like a the most supernatural character in the story, would be this personification of the river, the source of this wisdom for the Chickasaw. And to bring that to life is just really exciting. And, you know, Jerod's written beautiful melody for this character to sing. And so I feel like he's sort of a grounding presence in the story. He gives Loksi the sort of the courage to become her own self, which is really a wonderful thing to be a part of. So glad to be here, and great to sing this beautiful music for a second time.
Yeah. And one thing, if I may mention, there's a new work coming up that Grant is going to be premiering with the North Carolina Symphony that I'm composing for him, and it's being sung in his neighboring Catawba language of the Lumbees, and so he's going to be. It's a real homecoming for Grant to go work with the symphony there, and so it's a song cycle for him, for solo baritone and orchestra.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any questions popping up in the chat there, you guys. So if you have a question, pop it in the chat because we're getting close to wrap time. We're at 20 minutes. And as you guys know, we tend to wrap up before 30 minutes elapses. So, and I don't think we've mentioned it, but when is the performance going to happen exactly? What day and time for anybody who wants to catch it?
Friday, February 28th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
All right, and that is at the Holy Oaks. Is it a conservatory? The
performance will be in Abbey Memorial Chapel on the campus of Mount Holyoke College, 50 College Street, South Hadley, Massachusetts.
All right, awesome. So, is there anything about this project that we haven't talked about that anybody thinks is important? I think we've covered, like everybody's personal impressions. Is there something, or I guess, what's the future for Loksi Shaali beyond this? Because that's something that we always do. Is when is the next premiere? Was there going to be a West Coast premiere, maybe an international premiere for Loksi Shaali?
This will be premiered in every major opera house across the globe naturally, and so everybody can look forward to that.
All right.
That's all in the works.
Awesome. Well, and at some point too, we should consider maybe doing an internet premiere. We need to do an internet production of this where we live stream it to our channel, and then everybody can see and do a totally different version of it that's like a digital version, so just to pitch that idea.
We'll do that when it premieres at the Sydney Opera House. We'll do it from there.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, that would be. I will get on a plane for that. So, but
I think our beautiful costume designs by Margaret Wheeler that we'll be wearing.
Awesome. Yeah, well, and when it premiered in Oklahoma too. There was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the production was kind of like mostly lighting and costumes. There wasn't a lot of set. Is that theme going to be carried over, or is there going to be?
Yes, this is what's called a concert performance. It's not staged in a theater. It's very much like the Les Mis 25th anniversary performance in Toronto, where everybody was in costume but standing in a line in front of the orchestra. That's what a concert performance is like. And many times operas are performed as a concert performance, and so that's what we're doing right now. We're not staging in a full theatric, but Mark was mentioning something that's really, really important. You're asking something that's important about this. The production staff on this entire thing is largely American Indian. And so Margaret Wheeler, who is Chickasaw, is the costume designer, and Jerica Hookey is the costume builder, and she is Cherokee, and she works at Lyric Opera in Chicago as well. And so it's just really important to know that a lot of the major players, of course, I'm the composer and I'm Chickasaw, and Lokosh is Chickasaw, and he is the interpreter and translator. And so this is really, and of course, when we premiered it, we had 5 native leads that were singing, and I mean, this is like unprecedented, and it's the first opera sung entirely in a native language, and with super titles and everything. It was really, really cool, and it's absolutely saturated with Muskogean melodies, and so it's just, I mean, you couldn't get more native in an opera. And so but it's not just me that wrote it, but it's everybody that's involved. It's really, really quite remarkable, and I'm so grateful to Maestro Tian Hui-Ng for commissioning this. And just it's kind of a side note, I was actually applying for supportive grants to launch it, and he was on one of the panels, and I never got it. I never won any grants, and so but what he did is he snuck it into his faculty at Mount Holyoke, because they do commission operas on a regular basis, and he had taken it to them and proposed, I'd like to do this as the next opera. And that's really, I think it's really important for people to know that when you're applying or you're in your game, or it's like, winning competitions isn't always it. It's always being in the game and in the ring, in the arena of people who are aware of what you're doing. It's always always about those types of connections that you make. And so if you come in with authentic materials and everything like that, somebody may end up, that's how the world works in general. And this is just another one of those really beautiful examples. And because he believed in it enough to take it on, all of us are now on the same screen here, sharing this success together. And I'm so grateful that he took a chance to do that. So Maestro, I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you, Jerod.
I think it's also worth noting that it is very difficult to get a world premiere. And after a world premiere, it is even more difficult to get a second performance. That we are doing a second performance here with our maestro, where he works with his students, getting to show our culture that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. The four of us were just with the Native American students earlier today, and they're coming to our concerts and they're coming to these events, and they wouldn't have that chance otherwise. And we wouldn't have a chance to share our cultures otherwise either.
Right.
And additionally, we've all sat with this music now for 6 months, however long it's been. And it's now more in our bodies. We're able to embody these characters more. We're able to tell the stories better. And if there's a subsequent performance after this that we get to be a part of, it will be even better. And the more we live with this, the more we can tell the story. This universal story that affects all of us. We're all from shell-shaking cultures. All three of us who are from this, that are in. And that's a big deal because it is universal. And that's why it's important that the Mvskoke people know about this, because it's not just a Chickasaw tale. It is a tale about all of us. And that's really exciting.
It's very much an Eastern Woodlands tale in general. I mean, it applies to a lot of the woodland tribes, which is a lot of Indian country.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be able to do this without having subsequent performances. So this is a really exciting time for all of us.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I wanted to thank you guys too for always keeping me in the loop so I can have you on the program, because everybody loves it. And I think it's very interesting what you guys are doing, and the voice that is going out into the world from all of the southeastern tribes, just like you're saying, Mr. Tate, that people haven't heard, yet. So that is very rare in the modern time that you would have a voice that nobody's heard, come forth from any art. So, but also,
well, Jerod, I really appreciate it. You're awesome, man. This is really, really cool that you're open to this and helping us nerd out about classical music.
well, I think it's important too, for the audience to get exposed to stuff that maybe they aren't exposed to every day. It's kind of off the beaten path for them, and say, hey, look, there's Indians out here doing stuff. Guys, it's not what you expect, but it's very interesting. So. And I also want
world players, absolutely.
Yes, and if we're to go down that rabbit hole for a second, as southeastern tribes have always been, like negotiating with people, the Europeans when they came over, the southeastern tribes would go meet with them and everything. So it's something that you could say that internationality of southeastern tribes is something that's inherent in their being. So, but without getting too weird, I did want to mention to you, Dr. Kunkle, that and if you guys haven't checked it out, there's a video on our channel of Dr. Kunkle and her daughter singing the Mvskoke Lullaby at the Kennedy Center. It's a very popular video. We've had some great comments on it. A thumbs up to you on that, and I appreciate that. And we published that a while back, but it's still going strong. So if you guys, anybody here who hasn't seen that, you should check it out.
Huge majority of that. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. And we are at exactly 28:30. I do not see any questions in the chat, so I wanted to thank you guys for being on the program. For you guys watching, I am going to be doing a Lawyered Up tomorrow. I'm not for sure what time I'm going to be doing it, but if you want to get caught up on those Supreme Court oral arguments that we had talked about before or any of that stuff, we're going to be talking about it tomorrow. And also on Friday, I am meeting with the team on the pre-production for the gardening program season 2. If you guys have any suggestions or anything for the gardening program, hit us up on Facebook, give me a message on Facebook, message me on YouTube, send me an email, say, hey, I'd like to see this in the second season of the gardening program, because we're going to be meeting on how to do that and everything. We've already had a very interesting suggestion. If you guys caught last week's live wire about plant music, the song of the council oak, and if you guys haven't, that are in the meeting right now, haven't heard of that, go to our channel, check it out, because what that is a gentleman took recordings of the bioelectrical signals of the council oak tree, and those signals, he had a performance where those signals controlled a synthesizer to produce sounds. And so it was kind of mixed with a history lesson about the tree, etc., etc. I'm going to be publishing a video of that performance maybe tomorrow or Friday. I'm still editing it. So that's coming too. If you guys weren't able to go see plant music, you can see plant music on the channel. And that's also, we're talking about using the ideas behind plant music to maybe do the music for the second season of the gardening show. So if you guys like that idea, let me know. That was a long closer. so I wanted to thank you guys for being on again, and I wanted to thank you guys out there for watching. And with that, I will see you guys later. Mado, Hadum, Chihichat, Lees.
Mado.